that Excel file as a data table, that we know, right? And we'll perform the operations on the data table with help of that Excel file. But just consider, if we don't have the Excel file as an input form, we have multiple input forms. As I said, we'll consider input form like PDF documents. We'll take the data from the PDF documents, right? We'll take the data from the mails, various mails. We'll take the data from the various files, right? So data input form would be anything, right? It could be anything, it's not fixed, right? But when we formulate this, when we perform some business logic on that, if we used data, if I don't have the Excel file with me, right, I don't have the rows and columns with me, I have the different various data sources, then how I can convert that data sources in a data table, right? So that we will see today. Okay, so accordingly we'll see the different data table related activity as well, right? So first activity, right, so we have one activity in UiPath called as the build data table. Build data table. Build means I'm creating data table from myself manually. We can consider we can say we are creating a data table, right? We are creating the data table from our site. Okay, it's not already exist. So for example, I need to create a data table, right? Now what I'll do, I'll just drag this build data table activity here, and you will see here we have this build data table activity, and inside this we have one button called as the data table button. And once you hover this data table, or once you hover this mouse on that button specific, you will see create a data table according to a specific schema. What do you mean by the word schema? Schema is nothing but that rows and columns. That is called as a schema, or we can call that as a skeleton, right? So usually when we consider data table, so that data table is consist of a collection of some data, and the data is come from a form of the rows and column. Okay, so here also if I'll click in this button data table, so I'll get this pop-up. Okay, and similar like as a Excel file, also from here also we can create a skeleton of that particular data table, right? But here we can only create a skeleton, or we can only create a schema of that particular, you can say, data table. Now what do you mean by schema, or what do you mean by skeleton, that we will see. So here if you see, we have columns, right? And that columns has like the string data, you can say variable type, here integer data type, and we have multiple rows here. But from here we cannot pass data directly. For example, suppose now if I want to create data in form of like 3 columns and 3 rows, then how we can create that? So for that, what I'll do, I'll simply click on this data table, right? And after that I'll just close this. I'll just click on this close button, and I'll just click on this button, or you can say this button. Now this is a blank, you can say blank screen with me with this plus sign. So what I'll do, I'll just click on this plus sign. Once I click on this plus sign, now I'm creating a column, right? I'm providing some column name here, right? So here I'm using, for example, name of a student. This is my first column name, which is having data type string, because name is, you can say name is always in the form of the string. So from here you will see there are a lot of data type like integer data type, string data type, object data table, or whatever. But here name of student is usually consider, or the name of student is form of the alphanumerical value, or you can say new alphabetical value. So I'll just take as a string. Allow null value, we will we will take through all these options later on once we complete this. Okay, so what do you mean by allow null value? Means what we will see in the you can say later, after this session. Okay, default value, unique, or max length, right? So as of now name of the student is equal to string. This is my first, you can say first column. If I want to create one more column, right, so again I'll just click on this plus sign, Now here I'll use address of student. Again the data type is equal to string, right? And again I'll just click on this plus sign, and here school name of student. Again I'll just keep this data type as a string. Okay, now if you see here, I have created 3 column name, and this is blank. I can only pass some hard coded value. But as I said, with help of this build data table, we can only create the skeleton, or you can say with I can only create the schema of a data table, right? So I have created the schema, or I have created the skeleton of a data table. So here my first column name is name of student, address of student, and school name of a student. Okay, I simply click on the OK. Now my skeleton is ready, and if you see, we don't have any input value, so just consider this is the input. I have provided all input value here, and now here on this output value I'll simply create one variable. What I'll do, I'll simply create one variable. So I'll just click on these 3 dots, and I'll use control K, var for variable, dt for data table, right? Variable data table, right? So now this var dt, this data table has been created. Okay, now what I'll do, for you can say for demo purpose, I simply pass some, you can say, hard coded value here. For example, name of a student, like you can say I'll just simply pass Ravi. Address of student, you can say Mumbai, or you can say Poddar, right? Ravi, Mumbai, Poddar. School name of a student, simple Poddar, right? Now whichever data I have just passed here, hard coded value which I have passed here, so that value or that data is stored inside this var dt. Then so we know ki we have Excel application scope, we have write range activity. With help of that, now we can write that data table value inside the Excel file. We know that. Okay, we learn that activities like Excel application scope and write range activity, or you can say append range activity, right? We have seen that. So today we will see one more activity called as the output data table. Output data table. What do you mean by this activity, or what is this output data table? What we'll do, we'll simply drag this activity here. Right, what we'll do, we simply drag this activity here. So if I'll hover this activity here, if you see, writes a data table to a string using a CSV format. So what this activity does, basically what this output data table activity does, so this activity converts my data table value from data table to string, right? So here what I'm sending as an input, I'm just passing the var dt, right? And to hold my output value, here I am creating a single variable which is in form of the string value, simple. So again control K, var str, right? Var for variable, str from string, and output data table, because I don't know what kind of data is available in the data table. So I wanted to know what kind of data is available in data table. That's what I have simply used output data table, and I am just pass that data table value as an input value, and I'll just and with help of this activity we'll get output as a in form of the string. So that's what I have just created one more variable, and I have just passed that variable here. Now here I'm just using one message box to know what kind of data is available in this data table. And we know in message box we used usually string value, so we have this variable string value with me, right? Now I'll just run this process, okay, or you can say I'll just run this project. Now if you see, name of the student Ravi, address of the student you can say Mumbai, and school name of the student is equal to Poddar. As expected, that expected result we will get. Okay, this is the in form of the string. Okay, so again, if we get a string value or if we get output in a string format, again we can perform all the string operation with help of this string. You can say we can perform the string operations. I can copy the existing string with the another string. I can concat two string. There are a lot of operations which we can perform with help of the string operations. That also we will see later on. Okay, so but this is the, you can say, hard coded value. We just consider if we have more values with me, then how we can do that. As I said, this is only we can, with help of the build data table, we can only create this skeleton, or we only create some schema of that particular data table, right? So this is a no, this is not a right way to create a data table or to create a data table value. So how we can do that? Okay, so I'll just delete this, other things I'll just keep as it is. Okay, now so to perform, or now I have this, you can say, column with me with help of this build data table. Now what I need to do, I need to pass some rows inside this data table. So a data table is a collection of the columns and rows. So column is already created with help of the build data table activity. Now what I need to do, I need to pass the row value, right? Row value inside this data table, or you can say I need to pass some data row value inside this you can say skeleton, right? So again we have one more activity called as the add data row, right? We have one more activity, it's called as the add data row. So the third activity, so build data table, right? Build data table to build a skeleton, or you can say schema or skeleton of the data table. What is the input? Input is, I'll just consider here as a schema. And what is the output? Output is data table. We'll get output in form of the data table. That is my first activity. What is the second activity which we have seen? The second activity is output data table. So what is the input of this data table? Input is existing data table. Existing data table. And what is the output? Output is form of the string. What is the output? Output is form of the string format. This is my second activity. Now the third activity, add data row. Add data row. So what is this activity? We will see. Add data row is basically used, this activity is used to add the row in the data table, or you can say data row in the data table. We'll see how we can add that. So I have just dragged this activity here, and if you see, we have three input, right? We don't have any output as such here. We have three input, we can pass three input to this activity, right? So first we will see data table. So I'll just pass the data table value here, you can say var dt. So I'll just simply pass var dt here. Means what I need to do, I need to perform operations on this data table, right? And in this data table I have a column name is already available in this data table. So I'll just pass var dt, right? This existing data table inside the add data row. Now we have two things, like one is the array row and the second is the data row. Either I can pass the data row or I can pass array row. In both way I can add the data row inside the data table. We will see one by one how we can pass that. So first we will see array row. Array row means what? Now before that, what do you mean by the array, right? So array is, we have already seen this array, right? So array is a collection of similar data type. for example, if I'll create one array, okay, so I can store, I can, if I'll create one variable array, for example ABC, so within this ABC I can store multiple and for example this ABC array has the string as a data, you can say variable type. So in this ABC, with help of this array within the single variable, I can store multiple values ABC, you can say PQR, or you can say XYZ, or many more. Okay, so I can use the single variable with array data type. I can store multiple values inside this, you can say variable array. So this is a definition of the array. Is a collection of a similar data type. You cannot store the different data inside this, you can say array. I cannot put this 1 2 3 or this integer value to this string array type. So that's what I have just mentioned. It's a collection of a similar data type. So here how we can pass this array as a array row. Now just consider we have these values with me, okay, or we have this Excel, or you can say we have these PDF files with me, okay. For example, we have this PDF file, or you can say Excel files with me. Okay, now for example we have multiple files with me. Now I want to store this customer ID and this invoice ID. So easily what I can do, I can create two variables for that. So here I am using one assign activity. Here I am just creating one variable called where invoice ID. I am creating one variable called as the where invoice ID which has a data table, or which has a variable type is equal to string, okay, and I can get that value from that PDF file. So I simply, now as for this example, I'll put the value as like 5 6 something like that, but usually if I want to make this value as a dynamic, so I can get that value from that PDF file. Okay, now again if I want to store, now as in this our example, what we have like name of the student, address of the student, and school name of the student. So same data will take here, right? So instead of this where inside, I'll just use var where name of student string. Again I'll use where address of a student. Again this is also string, and again I'll use where school name of a student. Again this is also you can say this is also in a form of the string. So to hold that three values, I am creating three assigned variables, right? So here now I'll use where name of student, I'll simply pass in double quotes now as of now, or for this example I'll use hard-coded value. But if I want to dynamic that, so we'll put some, you can say values from the PDF file, or you can say if I want to get some values from any other format, so we can do that as well. So this is again where address of the student. So here I'll use, you can say Mumbai, okay, and here for example where name of the school name of the student. So here I'll use Euro School, okay, Euro School. So this data is ready for me. So I have the you can say column name with me, I have the data table with me. Now I have this three value with me, right? So here with, now as I told you, so either I can use array row here, or I can pass data row here. So first we will see how is array row will work. So to add this value inside this array row, I'll simply click here and now I need to pass this array value. So whenever I need to pass value in form of the array, I need to open this curly braces and I need to close this curly braces, and here I am passing that variable which we have created. Now where name of the student, comma where address of the student, comma where school name of the student. Now if you see, this value I have passed here, so this value will this value would anything, okay. This is, I have, for this example I have passed the hard coded value, so we can make this value as dynamic as well as per the our requirement, right? So now this ready, this now this whole program is ready for me, right? Now if I'll execute this, okay, so if you see Ajay, Mumbai and Iru, okay, the same value is added here in this data table, okay. So in this way you can add the value of the array row. So just remember, whichever value, now if you see we have three, I have created three columns names. That's what in this assign activity I have taken three variables, and the same three variables I have passed here. If I'll miss something, so in that case, that null value means blank value, so blank value is added there. It will not give us any error for me, but it will add the null value for me. Got it? So in this way you can add some data value, or I am adding data row to my existing data table. So in short, I have created now a data table with column as well as row. Okay, now if I want to add another data row, so again I need to, you can say, create again another three variables, and again I need to use add data row. This is, for example, this is a hard coded value, but dynamically if I want to create, so I can use for each loop, and with help of that for each loop I can pass a dynamic value. So in that case I only use one add data row value, and I need to pass the dynamic value directly to the add data row. Okay, so in this way, with help of this array row, I can pass the data row value to my existing data table. This is the first approach. Now just consider, for example, now if I want to pass the second, if I want to use second approach with help of the data row, if I want to pass the data row value to the existing data table, then how we can pass that, we will see that as well, right? So here I'll just disable this, okay, and inside this disable activity I'll just send unnecessary data or unnecessary activity, so it will not execute, right? And from here also I'll delete the value from the array row. Now here if you see, it will say you need to just pass some data row value here. That's what here they have just given me the this error. Okay, now here what I'll do, now what I need to do, I need to pass some data row value here. So for that what I need to do, here I am creating, now for data row I need to create one variable. This is little bit a technical side, just concentrate, okay. So for here we don't require any thing. I am just passing the hard coded value in form of the row, okay. So I have just passed that value in form of the array directly in the open curly braces and close curly braces. I have just passed that values like variable value, but from here with help of this data row, to create this data row I need to do some, you can say, technical stuff here, okay. So for performing this data row I need to create one data row variable. So from here, from this variable panel, I am creating one variable which is in form of the data row. So I have used dr for data, r for row, d for data, so data row. And from this variable type I have choose data row, data row. If you see system.data row, right, dr is equal to data row. Now I have created one data row variable, right? So now here I'll want take assign activity here, right? Inside this assign activity I'll use data row, right? Now how this data row will work, okay, and how this data row will added in the existing data table. To add this new data row in the existing data row. So that's what we have some syntax. What is the syntax? So what I need to do, I need to use data table value. So var dt dot new row. What do you mean by this sentence? So this data row I am adding. So here if you see, will go in this way. Okay, so this is my existing data table. Okay, this is my existing data table, and inside this existing data table I am creating a new row, and inside this new row I am passing the data table, or you can say data row. What? So in this way we can go with that. Okay, so inside this existing data table I am creating a new row. That's what this var dt dot new row for this new row, and inside this new row I am passing this data row. So this is the technical syntax. So dr is equal to var dt dot new row. Right, now my row is created. Again I need to take one assign activity. Okay, and inside this now I need to pass that variable. So syntax is like dr in bracket that column name is equal to like name of the student. So I'll just copy this name of the student. How we can copy this? I need to just simply click on this pencil icon. Okay, so same value I need to pass here as well, right? Name of the student, and I'll use for example Vijay. Okay, so this is my first data row value of name of the student. Similar way I can use one more assign activity, and here again I'll use dr. What is my second column? So from here I'll choose my second column value. So I'll just click on this edit one. This pencil icon is for edit purpose. So address of a school. Okay, address of a school, and here now I'll use for example Pune. Again I'll taking one more assign activity, and again I'll use dr, and here again I'll use the third activity, or you can say third value from this existing data table. So I have used this school of the student. So I'll just choose on this school of the student. So here I'll just pass this third value here, right? And here I'll for example I'll just put something like NHP or something like that. Okay, now simply here what I need to pass, I need to just simply pass dr, nothing else. Okay, so I have just passed dr. Here what I need to pass, I need to pass this array value. So here in this data row I'll just simply pass the data row, right, which I have created. So this technical syntax is little different one. Okay, so I have created a data row variable as a type data row, and var dt dot new row, because I am adding new row each time, right? So if I'll execute this, so if you see Vijay, Pune and NHP, right? Now if I want to add one more you can say row, so again what I need to do, again I need to use the same here, because I'll use 1 2, or you can say what I'll do, now I'll put the whole activity inside one sequence, because I need to use that na. So here assign, one more assign. Okay, again assign. Okay, again assign, and the second one is this data row value, right? So what I need to do, I need to perform the second value, right? So again I'm using the same sequence, copy paste, right? So that is the beauty of, you can say, this sequence activity, right? I can put all these things and just bundle that activity, and I can then use as per our requirement. So now it's ready for me. Now I just want to change this value, right? You can say Swapnil. Okay, Noida, and here we'll take any value. Okay, okay, now then again if I'll execute this, okay, if you see, we have two values with me, right? So in this way we can add the data row with existing data table, right? So we'll revise all these things, right? So here this is the hard coded value. It's all for, you can say, for your basic concepts. Okay, so in real time we are not creating value again and again, right? In this way we are not going through. We can use for each loop, as if we get any value from input value, so with help of the for each loop we can use that as a data, as a, you can say, multiple data, and only we need to use one single, you can say, add data row value, and we can pass that value inside the for each loop, right? So in this way we can pass one by one, one by one, one by one. But for demonstrate purpose I have used this example. So I'll again revise all these things. So what is the basic purpose of this whole session is like key, for example, what we need to do, we need to create our own data table, right? Now once we get the value in form of the data table, now I can perform the all the data table functionality. I can sort this value, I can put some filtration inside this, I can put some sorting in this, okay, I can put some business logic, I can perform all the you can say business logic with help of the data table. That is the main motto of this whole exercise, right? So that's what I have done here. I have created one build data table activity. Here I have, from this build data table activity, I have created one skeleton, I have created one schema for the data table value. Now again I have used one add data row activity here. Okay, inside this add data row activity, it's up to me or it's up to you how you can pass the value to this add data row activity. Either you can pass the value in form of the array row, or you can pass the value in form of the data row. It's up to you, it's up to me ki how I can use this activity, right? So here in data table I can pass the existing data table value. So if I want to pass this array row, I simply use double quotes, okay, just like this. I have created three variables, I have just passed the three variables value, and I simply use the curly braces, open curly braces and close curly braces, and simply I'll just pass these values like this, you can say where name of the student, comma, where address of the student, and where school name of the students. So I can use this way. And if I want to pass the value in form of the data row as well, so I can, for that I am creating one variable. I have created one variable as in form of the data row. How I can create that? Dr, and from this variable type you can choose data row, DATA data ROW, data row, right? Data row, right? So dr is equal to data row, right? Once I create that variable, so I have used here existing data table dot new row, because I am creating a new row value, and now I have just pass that existing column name to the data row, and I'm passing this hard coded value. Here I can use, if I want to make this as a dynamic, so I can go with that way as well, but for this demonstration purpose I have passed this hard coded value, right? So data name, name of the student, address of the student. Just consider whichever column name you are passing, the same column name we need to pass as it is, okay? Otherwise it will give me the error, syntactical error or syntax error, right? So here again I used add data row. This is for the single entry. If I want to perform, if I want to add multiple data, so in this example I can use the same flow, I can add the same flow for the second value as well. Okay, got it?